As said before, I've been working on climate change for the past 10 years, and over that time I've seen a lot of action on tackling our emissions with technology. But only very, very recently, the past 3 years, have I seen emphasis on the role of nature as part of what we can do on climate change. And yet, as stated by our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, at COP27, there really is no solution to climate change without protecting and restoring nature. Because the natural environment, our forests, our oceans, wetlands, are comparable to enormous sponges which absorb huge amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and keep our climate balanced. But it's not just that, it's that nature in itself is important in its own right. And when we speak of integrated solutions for climate and biodiversity loss, we talk about nature-based solutions. Studies have shown that nature-based solutions could provide a third of the cost-effective climate change mitigation that we need over the next decade, a very significant proportion. So I was very proud that the UK brought nature into the heart of action on climate change in Glasgow at COP26. And the UK was also at the forefront of efforts to help secure the global biodiversity framework agreement at Montreal in December, which we really saw as a Paris moment for nature, a critical milestone in halting and reversing biodiversity loss by 2030. But we mustn't underestimate the scale of the challenge, and we must approach this also with a good dose of humility. The UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. Over the past 50 years, much of the UK's wildlife-rich habitat has been lost or degraded. But we are making genuine efforts to change this. We were the first major economy in the world to set a net zero emissions target in law. To meet that target, we must protect and restore nature with nature-based solutions forming a key part of our approach to tackling climate change. So as this session is focused on specific initiatives to integrate action on climate change and biodiversity loss, I'd like to tell you about 3 types of measures introduced by the UK government for restoring the natural environment and delivering nature-based solutions. These are some of the measures introduced as part of the 25-year Environment Plan, which is our vision for a quarter of a century of action to help the natural world regain and retain good health. And the plan is reviewed and refreshed every 5 years, a commitment set into law in the Environment Act 2021. The measures I'd like to tell you about today can be divided into 3 categories, looking at new land development, land already in use in our natural environment. And the reason I'm looking at land development is because we often tend to focus on protected areas, which are really important and something that UNESCO does ever so well. But what we've seen in the UK is that we've had protected areas for many years, and yet our natural environment is continuing to be degraded. So we have to do something on land development as well, both new land development, but also existing land development, whether that's for agriculture or houses or cities, roads, whatever it may be. So looking at new land development, the UK Environment Act in 2021 introduced something called a mandatory biodiversity net gain requirement, which is really important. What it means is that new land development, where it's for roads, houses, infrastructure, or fields, will need to deliver at least a 10% biodiversity net gain for at least 30 years. And this is going to be enforced from the end of this year, so it's quite a new thing. So this means giving back to nature more than was taken away, such as by planting trees or animal habitats. It can be done in lots of different ways, and it can be done on site or also in another location as well. So that's biodiversity net gain. But we have to look at land already in use as well, for which we have lots of different schemes, which we've been renewing and refreshing. And one of these is the Countryside Stewardship Scheme, which provides financial incentives for farmers, foresters, and land managers to look after and improve the environment. And how this works is in the form, basically, of annual payments for specific activities on different land types, which support the conservation and restoration of habitats like woodlands and grasslands. And alongside this, there's also the sustainable farming incentive, which pays farmers to carry out farming activities in a more environmentally sustainable way. And Alexandra mentioned that earlier as well. Our aim is for 70% of agricultural land and 70% of farm holdings to be covered by our new farming schemes by 2028. And seeking also to bring other countries on board with this, we announced an agricultural breakthrough at COP26, where parties agreed to make climate-resilient, sustainable agriculture the most attractive and widely adopted option for farmers by 2030. As just to repeat, our core aim is really to halt, but also reverse biodiversity loss by 2030. That's what was agreed in Montreal, and that's what we're really seeking to do in the UK. And finally, there's, of course, our natural environment. And here I want to focus on the restoration of our natural carbon sinks, which are mainly woodlands and peatlands in the UK. Studies show that peatlands store twice as much carbon as all the world's forests. So they are a very important source of carbon and climate mitigation. Yet only 13% of UK peatlands are in a near natural state. So the UK has established a £750 million Nature for Climate Fund, supported by action plans, through which we aim to restore over 35,000 hectares of peatlands and treble the creation of woodland by 2025. The creation rates of woodland by 2025. These schemes will help us to deliver our targets to restore nature and leave the environment in a better state than we found it, changing the trajectory that our country has been on ever since the Industrial Revolution. I really hope that this might provide some useful food for thought as we reflect on this topic today, and I look forward to hearing your reflections. Thank you.